Has your UK visitor's visa application been refused? If that is the case, don't panic, because this video is exactly what you need to see. Because in this video, I am discussing a live UK visitor visa refusal case in which what went wrong and how you can learn from it and what are the legal remedies that are available going forward, whether it's a fresh application or what are the changes in the law. Not only that, I also show you what are the grounds of genuine visitor coming to the UK and under which rules a visa case officer can refuse your UK visitor's application. And let's move forward. So in this visa, you can clearly see I have redacted some of the details. It says your application for visit visa to the United Kingdom has been refused. And here are the decisions. I have refused your application for a visit visa because I'm not satisfied that you meet requirements of paragraph 4.2. And there are one or two, three reasons. But in short, I can help you understand that this person was going to meet a family member in the UK who's a cousin, you can see, but they have stated that the documents that you have provided do not demonstrate that your cousin is not present in the UK or and settled in the UK. So that is one reason, because he's saying that he's going to the UK for the 3 days and he's going to meet his cousin, but there was no evidence to show that there is a cousin who's presently in the UK and has a settled status. Now, there is also that this person showed that he's a software engineer, he's earning some money, and he provided bank statements, but that was insufficient because when you apply for standard visitor visa, this person also provided other copies of the passport for each and every page, in which there was a Schengen visa stamp. Okay, and there I have redacted some of the details because of data privacy reasons. So, in short, what they're trying to say in this is that till the time he applied for the UK visitor visa, he showed the last 3 months probably his bank statement showing the salary credits coming in as a software engineer. But when he went applied for Schengen state visa, where he went, it clearly stated that it is subject to no employment conditions. For example, if he was visiting France or Germany or one of the 26 Schengen states, there was a condition that he cannot work. But during that tenure, in the bank account, there was no salary credit in the same year, as a result of which the visa officer felt that there was a red flag, that there is no economic stability and there is no consistency of income like a salary coming at the end of each month. Because prior to the UK visitor visa application, there was money coming in, but during the Schengen visa, there was no money coming in, right? So that is one reason. And he also said that given the above, I'm not satisfied that you're generally seeking entry as a visitor or intend to leave at the end of your visit and your application is refused under paragraph 4.2a and c. And then, he goes on to say that there are some savings that you showed, and then there is a planned amount of money that you expected to spend on this trip in the UK. But he was not satisfied that you've demonstrated economic circumstances properly. Now, I'm going to go into detail and I'm going to explain my legal analysis, which I've documented down below. And in the end, he has also said something extremely important. Any future UK applications you make will be considered on individual merits. However, you're likely to be refused unless your circumstances of application change. In relation to this decision, there is no right of appeal and right of administrative review. Now, let's break it down. There are a couple of things this person is saying. He's saying that if you apply again as a fresh UK visitor visa, and it will be decided on individual merits based on documentation that you provide, but he's also indicating that it is more likely to be refused if your circumstances do not change in terms of application. So for example, like he's not shown economic stability, no consistency for income, no proof of sponsor, the person who's actually a relative in the UK, their settled status. So it is likely to be met by the same outcome. And in this decision, he writes in the last line, there is no right of appeal or right of administrative review. And I think this is a really, really difficult thing for anybody who's applying for a visitor visa. That since 2012 or 2013, right of appeal and right of administrative review, has been taken off. And that what this means is today you can only ask them to reconsider, you know, and you can just write to them, but they will look at the existing evidence. Earlier, there used to be right of administrative review that used to cost £80, And or if you're not happy with the administrative review, you could always have a right of appeal to first tier tribunal, which you could even make online. And I've had experience of actually winning my appeal through writing from outside the UK for a candidate whose UK visa was refused despite showing all the documentation. And I'm going to make another video in relation to that as to how I won that appeal on written grounds. But today, if your visitor visa is refused, you have no right of appeal and right of administrative review. The only thing you can do is you can ask for a reconsideration, or you can go for judicial review, which is going to be extremely expensive, and I don't recommend it unless you can claim that there is a human rights breach that you are claiming in the judicial review. But what other remedy is available to you is to make a fresh application. Now, what you have to see is this paragraph. It says, I have refused the application for visit visa because I'm not satisfied that you meet the requirements of paragraph 4.2 family visitor, right? Because he's going to meet his cousin. The source of this is gov.uk. I have provided the link. Now let's look at my detailed analysis. The point one of the letter says, no evidence of your cousin present and settled in the UK. Now, I've highlighted what. So, when you are saying that you want to visit somebody in the UK and they are based in the UK, you need to satisfy the visa officer that this person actually exists. He is living in the UK and has a settled status or a British citizen. Now, settled is a legal word which simply means that you are allowed to stay in the UK either indefinitely, which is called indefinite leave to remain, or probably you could be even on a spouse visa possibly, but usually they prefer somebody on settled status where they can check whether somebody can live there indefinitely or a British citizen. So they did not provide any proof that this person is currently in the UK and has a settled status. So that was the error number one. Second, even if you provide say a passport copy, if you not provided a signed declaration letter saying, yes, I'm inviting my cousin between this and this date to the UK for this and this purpose, and I will be funding his entire trip. You are not convincing enough that you can afford to stay in the UK on your own if your income is low, for example. Third, even if you claim that somebody is living in the UK and that happens to be a cousin, how does the visa officer know that this person where he is living, the address, is allowed to be living there? So how do you prove that this person lives there? Either if they own a home, so they would have a mortgage statement. If they don't own a home, they would be renting a home, right? So they would be a tenancy agreement. And on top of that, they would be paying say something like council tax, utility bills like electricity or gas. So if you provide a tenancy agreement when it was signed, how much rent does this person pay, then you provide the last 3 to 6 months of utility bills. You could divide it into two parts like gas and electricity. So here is what you should have done, or he should have done. You should have had an invitation letter confirming relationship and address and purpose of visit, proof of immigration status, which is copy of passport, UK residence, like BRP or evidence of indefinite leave to remain, proof of cousin's address, utility bills, council tax and tenancy agreement or mortgage statement, and if the cousin is offering financial support, a signed declaration and recent bank statements. Now, why I say this is because anybody can sometimes take somebody's copy and claim that he is my cousin, but the government of the UK, the immigration officer, has to be satisfied that a they're related to you and they acknowledge that they will be paying for your trip, right? So if they're funding it, then they need to give a signed declaration. Their last 3 to 6 months, I would urge you to provide last 6 months statements. And on top of that, they should also provide their employment contract copy, the pay slip, and the pay slip should show the salary credited each month, which is actually entering in the same bank account. And then finally, you need to prove that you are in a relationship, like even if you're a cousin brother or cousin sister, then if you exchange some WhatsApp messages, so you need to show whether it is, if somebody is based in the UK, they would have a +44 number. If you're based in India, you would have a +91 number. And you can even show up to like 3 to 4 years of communication, but don't bombard them with needless details. But you can say, here is the mobile number of this person who's based in the UK. Here is my number, I'm based in India. Here are some of the chats that we have exchanged, and the snapshots are year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4. And then besides that, you can show social media images, whether it's on Instagram when they visited your home country or wherever you are many years ago. But you should show some proof that you are related. You can also show a proof that you were at a family gathering where you, your parents, the cousin and their parents were together, and you can identify in the photograph that, look, my cousin is standing left to right, I'm standing in the middle, behind them is my parents, XYZ. When you do that, you have satisfied the visa officer by stating that I'm actually related with this person by document. Just by saying that he's a cousin does not make you a cousin. You have to prove that they are related to you. So that was the first point that was missing, and this is how you should remediate when you make a fresh application. This is how indefinite leave to remain looks like. That it says that you can live there indefinitely. This is a snapshot of a BRP card, even though it shows 26 May 2021, when it was issued, and it is till 31st of December 2024. This does not mean that the visa is valid till there. It is the fact that BRPs were valid till the end of December 2024, but the visa runs indefinitely. Okay. Now, the point two was employment claim versus the bank evidence. So the applicant claimed that he worked as a software engineer and he had a monthly income, but the bank statements convincingly did not show matching and regular salary credits. Now, what the visa officer is trying to see is, do you have a stable job? Do you have income coming from any other sources? And are they coming in regular intervals? So I imagine that this person was employed, right? And they were working as a software engineer, but there was a gap in the bank statement during the time they visited Shangan state. What it simply means is that while the time they wanted to apply for a UK's visitor visa, they showed last 3 months of salary coming into their bank account. But prior to that, when they visited, say, Shangan state in whichever country, there was no salary coming in. Now, it raises a question that A, you don't have a job during that time, which is possible. B, you either working as self-employed, so the income varies, right? So there is no consistency. Or three, you did not provide a written explanation why there was a gap or inconsistency of why salary credit was not available in those 3 months when you were applying for Schengen visa. If you don't write that in a cover letter, the visa officer is going to assume that you don't have stability. Okay, so let's look at how you can remedy those things. So I'm going to make it red so that you can see. So you need to provide your employment letter, a contract copy on the letterhead where you're employed, your job title, your date of contract, salary, and also a letter or an email proving that yes, you're going for a vacation between this date and this date. It is approved, and also the HR email address and the mobile number. And make sure the email address is a work email address, not a Gmail or a Yahoo.com email, because that is something they pay attention to. Once they see that your leaves are approved, you have a direct line manager, they can always call the person and say, we got this application, we want to confirm if this person is working with you or not, right? So therefore make sure that you provide the details of a person who's actually going to answer that. And it is a good I think strategy if you give a heads up to your HR manager that, look, I'm applying for a visa for going for 10 days or 3 days or whatever it is for the purposes of wedding, whatever, a birthday party to my cousin, and they may reach out to you. Could you please confirm to them? If you do that, then there is a documentary proof. Then you need to show at least 3 to 6 months of payslip. Now, my suggestion is, if you are someone who wants to satisfy the officer in a strong manner, I recommend you provide last 6 months, not just 3 months. Normally what would happen is they look at your last 6 months, then you also provide the current bank statements of the last 6 months, and make sure the salary exactly to the nearest penny is actually entering the same bank account that you are showing the statement of. It is possible that you have multiple bank accounts where a salary comes and then there is another one in which you have expenses also. So if you only provided the bank statement where the salary is not crediting, they have every right to refuse because they're not showing the incomes and outgoings altogether. So what you can do in the cover letter is you can say, I have two bank accounts, the number is number is that. In one I get my salary credits, which you can compare with my pay slips and the taxes paid. And then there is another one in which I have outgoings like monthly loan, a credit card bill, mobile recharge, whatever it is, right? So that there is no doubt coming into the mind of the visa officer, and they say, aha, he is confirmed to me that he's getting salary here. There is no compulsion that you have to get salary only in one account, but you have to explain to the visa case officer, right? Next, I'm going to highlight this red. I've already covered that if it's paid into different bank account, then you need to provide written explanation also. If you are self-employed, now this is a pain for people who work for themselves, and I'm going to address it. So please pay attention. A salaried person is a person who actually works for some other company as an employee. A self-employed person is a person who works for themselves. Nothing wrong with that. But the challenge that comes with people who are self-employed or have their own companies is consistency of the income. So you could be a web designer, you could be YouTube content creator, you could be anyone, and you are getting income which is not fixed but variable. Say, imagine you're a YouTube creator and you get income based on the views and the number of people who how long they watch the videos. So how do you satisfy them, and what documents you should be providing? Then my suggestion is, if you're self-employed, if you are someone who is providing services like software development or whatever it is, then you need to show contract with your clients, like, this is my client, I have a contract in which I'll be not getting any payments for the first 3 months, but my payments will kick in from month 4, 5, 6 onwards. And the reason why is because we have structured the contract in such a way, it is based on the milestone. Only after we deliver the first milestone, then I'll get the payment. And that is why you do not see the credit in my bank account for first 3 months, but you saw two credits in each month. Explaining, so that the visa officer shows, yeah, understands that, okay, this person is self-employed, he does not get income in the first 3 months, here is a contract to confirm that, and there is inconsistency in the income, that also is answered here. But then the visa officer should know that, this guy will not go to the UK and be dependent on public funds. Now, what are public funds? Like, imagine all your money is finished, then they have to give you housing, they have to give you food expenses, and universal credit, which you're not eligible for. But they don't want you to access public funds. This is only available to people who are settled in the UK or British citizens. So they want to avoid that. So they want people who can fund that entire trip themselves, or if there is a sponsor. Now, what I would recommend, if you're self-employed, I would get a chartered accountant to attest your tax returns for the last 3 years, right? And then you show that this is your income. On an average, you're making this much, because the way you should calculate average is that this is my credits in the bank account, these are the invoices that support, these are the services that I've done, and what I've done is I've added them all together and divided by 12 to get an average for year 1, average for year 2, average for year 3. And those accounts I have income tax paid. There is a signature of the chartered accountant, the letterhead, contact details are provided, and you're welcome to check it. Because if you then give the visa officer that this is my average income, even if it is say 30,000 or 40,000 a month, for example, rupees or whichever currency you are in, you can say, okay, this is what he's earning, his monthly outgoings is this much. But then you also state that, I live with my parents, so I don't have I don't have to pay any rent, I don't have any big loans. The only thing that I have to pay is if I have a credit card bill, I have a small office space, I have a mobile bill, and I have an internet bill. That adds up to average this much per month, which you can see from my each and every bank statement. You can see, and that adds up to this much. So if I earn this much, my expenses are this much. This is my saving that I get. Then you also show that you have savings, besides the actual income that you're going to be spending. Because if you say you're earning 40,000 and you're spending 35,000 and you're left with 5,000, it is not enough for you to convince a visa officer that you will be able to go to the UK and then fund yourself with just 5,000 rupees. It is not going to be enough. They need to see that you will come back and then you will start working back again. Because if you're already struggling, they know that you have an incentive to come to the UK and start working illegally. That is why they need that you're a genuine visitor. Okay. If you are a company owner, very easy, provide the last 3 years of the tax return before the application. Even though they don't require it, say in year 1 I made a turnover of this much, this was my profit, from the expenses I paid this much salary, here is my tax income tax paid, here is my net salary that is shown in my company personal bank account. and my company bank account number is this much. You can see from this account there is a deduction of my salary, and this account is my personal account in which there is the income coming in, which is a salary which I've stated. Now when you do that, you're clearing the doubts in the eyes of visa officer, absolutely, because you're showing that even though I run my own company, there is a company separate bank account where I pay myself a salary, it is going out, and the bank account in which the salary is coming in is my personal bank account, and therefore this is where my salary gets credited. Based on that income, I pay taxes. There is a proof of that. You satisfy the visa officer completely in terms of economic stability. Now, the point three was that the passport shows travel Schengen visa, but bank shows deposit until a past month, which simply repeats the fact that this guy was not getting any money when he was traveling to Schengen state, but he only showed salary credits when he wanted to apply for UK visa. It is possible that any third party could put credits at the end of each month and call them as software development services based on fake invoices. There is no way for the UK visa officer to verify that, right? So if you have a job, you should say that this is my salary, and if you have an honest and innocent explanation, for example, you only started job 3 months ago, right? So you need to state that in the cover letter, saying that, dear sir, I started this job on this and this date. I have completed my probation period. Here is my employment contract copy in which the start date is mentioned. And prior to that, I was not having any job. But prior to that year, I had a job which ended, say, in early 2024. Here is the proof of that. So only time that I remain unemployed was from this period to that period. That's why there's no salary credit. And if I went to Schengen state, that was funded by my father. Here is a proof of that my father paid for the ticket, my father paid for the hotel cost and the visa cost. And then you provide a proof that he's your father. It could be his passport or a ID card, whatever it is, and you provide the bank statement which confirms that there was deductions, and then he paid for it, and a signed declaration from your father saying, yes, I funded his treatment. Not treatment, my apologies, his travel trip to Schengen state. Had he done that, then the visa officer would have not assumed in a negative way, saying that you have no consistency of income. Now, what would be the legal remedy? You should show extended bank statements covering most recent months, say up to 6 months, ideally. Pay slips from the employer covering the period, which I already explained to you. If salary was temporarily stopped, unpaid leave, bonus timing, salary moved to a new account, provide an employer letter explaining why the dates, and provide new bank statements. Now, it simply is addressing the point that it is possible that you didn't have a job, or you went on maternity leave, or you had some explanation that first 2 months you were getting the salary in this bank account, but the remaining salary you were getting in a different bank account. But the different bank account statements were not provided to the visa officer, nor was the cover letter stating that, look, for the first 3 months prior to the UK visa application, I've used this bank account for this application, but I also got my salary in the other account, which is here, and here's the bank account statement of that, so that the person knows that you are getting money and you have economic stability. If the travel evidence, if the applicant traveled recently, he should show leave approval from the employer and reasons to travel, authorized absence. Basically, what they're trying to say is that if you went to Schengen state, say France, then there has to be some evidence that you got your leaves approved. If you're unemployed, then you did not need any approval from the employer. Then you can just state that while I did not have a job, I wanted to travel, so I asked my father to fund my trip for a period of, say, 7 days, because I was stressed and I just wanted to have a nice vacation. And here is the proof that my father paid for it. So even if you don't have authorized absence, you can provide a genuine, bona fide explanation of why you traveled and on what basis you were able to fund that trip. Now, if you have any other income, rental income, business income, you should also show that to fill the gap. Now, point number four, not satisfied that the applicant is a genuine visitor and intend to leave the UK. Now, why the UK visa officer is coming to this opinion? Because he sees that the bank account and the software engineer jobs are not going together because there is no consistency of the income. He has a cousin in the UK, but he's not shown what is the ID of that person, or does this person even has a settled status in the UK. There is no proof of their address, there is no signed declaration. So the person says, I do not believe because you don't have consistency of income and no proof of ties to the UK, and no genuine reason or a proof to show that you will come back from the UK, that you are a genuine visitor, right? So how you can, it's all about credibility. So the legal test for a visitor visa centers on intention and credibility is, will you come for a short period and go home afterwards? So there has to be an evidence that they can see that not only you will go there, fund your trip, and then come back. There has to be a reason for you to come back. So for example, what can help you? Let's make it red. So there has to be clear employment proof showing that you must return to the work. So because you're permanently employed, you have authorized, absence email confirmation that your leaves are approved from this period to this period. You can even show your online approval in your internal system, in a, say, if you have a SAP or any work based system where your leaves are approved by the manager. It clearly shows that you're off on this date to this date. Give the contact details of the HR manager on a letterhead that you have to return back on this in this date, right? You show that. Then you need to show family responsibilities, like you are married, or if you've got tenancy agreement that you have to pay. There has to be something. And then if you have a long term tenancy agreement where you're living, that you've been paying these expenses, and to pay for these expenses, then look after your parents or your children, you will come back. If you don't have children, no problem. If you don't have a wife, no problem, but you should show that I have a job. I am going for a vacation. I'm watching a cricket match, or I'm attending a wedding, but then I have to go come back because I have to earn, my own money. And this is the reason that I am going to the UK, and because I have to, join my job. If I don't return, then I will lose my job. Okay. Then another important thing that this person is not shown is this green part. He has not shown clear itinerary of hotel bookings, return reservation, flight. So normally they advise you not to book the flights and accommodation until you get the visa, and you should not. But you can always go to booking.com, and you can go and see, on this date I will check in, and this date I will check out, and this is the cost per night, this is the hotel, this is the address, right? They ask you in the online visa application form. You add that, then you add the flight from leaving, say, from New Delhi coming to London Heathrow on this date to this date. This is going to cost you this much in INR, and then you add them together, and then you budget, say, 90 to 100 pounds, 120 pounds per day, for a period of, say, 3 days or 10 days. This, when you add them all together, you will have the breakdown of the total, trip, by each and everything. If somebody is sponsoring you, they need to provide the sponsorship declaration that they can afford all of these things. And then the home office, the UK case officer, would want to see what are the expenses of this person who's living in the UK, how much money do they earn. That has to be vetted out with a payslip with a national insurance number. And how much is their tenancy agreement, like how much do they pay per month, mobile bill and everything, how much is remaining in the savings. So imagine for 3 days this person was going to cost 1300 pounds. Now if this person is only saving 100 or 200 pounds per month after all expenses, the sponsor, then the home office officer would absolutely say no to you, because that money is not sufficient enough to pay 1300 pounds. Yes, you don't have to pay for the stay, but still you have to pay for the flights, which could be $1,000. So therefore it's essential that you, if you're going yourself, you show the hotel booking, flights, visa cost, travel insurance if you're carrying medical insurance. If you're going to be staying at that place, then you need to show your, if he's also funding your flight cost and everything, then you need to show that, and you need to have a signed declaration. Okay. And also you can also substantiate that, look, I have traveled in the past, I have gone to a country like Schengen state, say France, and I have returned back on time, and that proves that I am a genuine visitor. Because it is not only that you only come to the UK that you become a genuine visitor. They ask you in the online application form, have you ever been to any other countries out other than the UK? Has your visa been refused? So you say, yes, I've been to other country, my visa was not refused, I was supposed to go in this state. This is the stamp. I was supposed to come back. This is my stamp. And I returned because I am law abiding, and I only went for the purpose of vacation. This is how you need to spell it out. Now, point five is insufficient proof of funds and economic circumstances. I think this person fail to demonstrate not only the economic stability, like from the job. If this person had some savings, which probably the officer is talking about, he did not show that they were liquid. So let's look at this. So imagine there is an income that is coming from job, but you may have also mutual funds, equity investments, or say some fixed deposit with maturity date. You can also show that as long as they're liquid, means liquidity means that you can break them and then you can withdraw the funds immediately, right? So you can specify, if you have a fixed deposit, say I have a 5-year fixed deposit, which I can break anytime I want to. The only thing that I would lose is the interest of this much, right? But I'm happy to do that because I want to fund this trip myself. And if you do that, then you satisfy the person. But if you say I have property and all of that, but property is not liquid, it's not a liquid asset, you need something that is readily convertible. If your credit card has a limit of say 5 lakh rupees, and you say I have a salary of say 50,000 per month, and I'm going to fund my trip by using, in addition to my salary, through my credit card, then you can show that yes, look, here is the history of last 1 year or 6 months. When I went to say Schengen state, I paid all my expenses through this credit card, and then I paid back the credit card company. Because what it shows is that not only you will fund your trip in the UK, you will also come back and pay your obligation, which is your credit card bill. They need to be satisfied of that. Then, if your relatives are sponsoring, a sponsor letter plus bank statements, a breakdown of trip cost, fund transfers from elsewhere. For example, part of the funds of the trip are being paid of you. Say, for example, you funding your own flights, but the cost of stay of the hotel is going to be funded by your parents. So then get a letter signed by your parents, provide them their ID, like a national ID card or passport copy, and their recent 6 months bank statement confirming that yes, I am funding for this hotel stay. This is my bank statement, and I'm going to be funding this thing. And if you want some verification, there is my mobile number, which you can contact me at any point of time. If you do that, you've said okay, you, even though you're on a low income, you have somebody else in your family who's going to help you fund this 3-day trip or 4-day trip or 5-day trip. But the challenge for you is, if you're going longer, say 15-20 days, and you've got less money remaining, I think, you know because if you give an itinerary for 15 days but you only show expenses for say 3 or 4 days, they're gonna pick it up on that you're trying to lie. Your plan is to stay longer, because the visa is usually granted for 6 months minimum, right? So if you wanted to stay longer, you can stay longer in say more than 3 days or 4 days or 5 days, as long as you can satisfy that you know you have the funds for it. But if your work leaves are approved only for say 4 days or 5 days, because the trip is for 3 days but 1 day for travel and 1 day for return and some jet lag, then they need to be satisfied that you will actually return back, right? And you are going there for genuine reason. What you can't do is, you have a plan to go there and work illegally, which you should not, and then you just go there with one way ticket. That doesn't make any sense. That is the reason why the most of the visitor visa refusals are happening. Now, in terms of checklist, it's self-explanatory. You need employment letter, payslips, banking credits for the recent months. Ideally, you should show 6 months. People say 3 months. You need to have explanation of any gaps in employment, any gaps in salary coming into your account, evidence of ties to the home country, which will compel you to come back. Say you have a job that you have to attend, you have obligations, that you got children to look after, right? So if you can provide some credible evidence, that would be helpful. Now, clear evidence of funds, that if you're getting from one source, two source, or three source, then you should show that. Now, this is based on this refusal letter, based on, now each case, I want to caution you, and there is a disclaimer also, that each case is different. Now, what I am discussing in this visa case might not be relevant in another case. For example, here there is a proof that he was going to see a family member. But if you don't have a family member, then you are just a general visitor, you're not a family visitor. Now, when you're a general visitor, nobody's going to sponsor your accommodation, right? Unless you're being invited on a business that somebody's paying for it. You have to fund your entire stay, cost of travel, and daily expenses, right? Then you need to show those proofs accordingly. And what I've done at the end of this video, which I'm going to put it in the link down below, is I've created 4 templates. Now let me explain. Because this visa was refused, and I told you at the beginning, let me show you here what the visa officer has said. Any future UK visa applications you make will be considered on individual merits. However, you're likely to be refused unless your circumstances of application change. Now, it's pretty much saying that if you apply again, right, it will be most likely refused unless the circumstances change. And what he's talking about is he or she needs to be absolutely certain on the balance of probabilities that you are a genuine visitor, right? And you have no right of appeal and no right of administrative review, which is a bummer. The only thing you can do is reconsider that. If somebody has made a mistake, you can say, you have looked at my bank statement, but you've not seen the other amounts that are coming into the bank statement, and the reason was this, right? I had also provided a bank statement of my father, which funded the Schengen visa. You did not, consider that evidence. So then they will say, aha, somebody made a error. So this reconsideration would be done by somebody else other than the person who actually refused you visa, because the visa case officers are not lawyers, they're not legally trained, but they've been given rule guideline, and they've been asked to do checks in certain manner. Now it is possible, because they're human, that they will make some mistakes, right? Now the right of appeal and administrative review has been taken, which is very, very unfair in my opinion. And I think you ought to see whether to make a reconsideration request or you ought to make a fresh application. Now, my recommendation is this is not legal advice, is that you make a fresh application if you believe that there are more than one or two grounds that you need to satisfy. Like in this case, if you have got one point only on which they have refused you and you believe that they made an error, then you should absolutely ask for reconsideration, right? You say, I have provided everything and I disagree with the outcome. The reason is because uh, the person who said that I did not had funding for Schengen visa and there was no salary credits, I have substantiated that in the cover letter, stating that I only started the job 3 months ago. Prior to that, my trip to Schengen state was actually funded by my father. I had provided his bank statements also, but that was actually not considered by the visa case officer, and he failed to recognize that, and therefore there is an error on his part. Please look at documentation number so and so that you uploaded, because there will be a proof of what you submitted, right? And that is why I believe you should be making reconsideration request. Now, when you make a fresh visa application, you'll be asked again in the online application form, have you applied to the UK visa before? The answer should be yes. Have you ever been refused the UK visa before? The answer should be absolutely yes. Because if you lie there, then you'll be automatically rejected, most likely, because they will check. And if it turns out that you made a false statement, they will most likely not allow you to visit the UK for 10 years plus more, so please be honest. And then in the there is a column in the online application form. Do you have any comments? Say, I am attaching a cover letter in which I have rectified the reasons from my previous visa refusal. Please find the cover letter attached with my application. So when you will upload your documents, then you need to write a cover letter explaining that, due to the oversight and your lack of understanding, why you were not able to provide the documentation and there was a misunderstanding, and you've rectified it this time. So say, my visa was refused on this and this date, the visa reference number is so and so, the application number is so and so, here is the grounds for refusal, here is how I have actually rectified it. And then you provide proof like 1 2 3 4 5 6, and then the person will say, okay, this person is honest, he made some mistake, let me look at the circumstances, how he is funding the treatment, in not treatment, trip. And you know um, he will not be a burden, he's going to go and come back on time, he's a genuine visitor. And if you do that, you have a high likelihood on the balance of probabilities, because there is no certainty that your visa will be approved. So I have made templates for people whose visa as a general visitor who don't have relatives. I made a template for them as a cover letter, which you can amend, which you should read. And please know that this is not legal advice. It is for educational purposes only. the cover letter is there to give you structure so that you can explain your documentation and application to the visa case officer, because cover letters can make the difference between a visa getting approved and rejected, right? If you clearly specified, for example, in this case, that um, you will see that I don't have funds in my bank account for the time when I visited the Schengen state, and the reason is because this, I was funded by my father, his bank statement is this, and I think you ought to know that I only started my job in the last 3 months. Here is my employment contract copy, here is my payslip copy. If you write like this in that structure, you have high chances of getting a visa approved after visa refusal, right? They are not sitting there to refuse the visa. They have to be sure that you are a genuine visitor, right? Because they get a lot of people who try to come into the UK and start to live much longer. For example, I've seen cases where people have been granted 6 months visa. They said they are only coming to see their family for say 1 month, but they ended up staying for 5 months. If they see next time also they came for 5 months, another time they also came to live for 5 months on a 6 months visa, then you will fall into the category of these people. Let me show you. Okay, the applicant must satisfy the decision maker that they are a genuine visitor, which means will not live in the UK for extended periods through frequent or successive visits or make UK their main home. Now, what it means is every year you go to the UK 2 times, you have 6 months of visa, but in 6 months you actually live there for 5 months and 5 months. That is 10 months out of 12 months. That is actually like living in that country, and making UK a main home, right? Just because you went back from UK to India or wherever you are coming from, doesn't mean that you're a genuine visitor. If you're coming, they expect you that you came for say 10 days, 15 days, a month, 2 months, then you returned, and then you came back again for 2 weeks or 3 weeks. And if you're a frequent visitor, that's okay, but the problem is the word extended periods. So you cannot come like, say, in 2 years you came 4 times, and on each and every visit you stayed for 5 months or 4 months each time. That means they will know that the person who's coming there cannot be coming, because nobody gets a leave for 4 months in 4 months each time. That means 8 months in a year, and goes back and then they have a job, because nobody is going to give you that much of leaves if you're a salaried employee. If you're a self-employed person, and if you can substantiate that, yes, um, I have been traveling for a frequent period, I have stayed for 4 months because I supported myself, I did not take any public funds, I did not work, but at the same time, the reason for my longer stay was because of this, that I had fallen sick. Here is a proof of that. I did not depend on NHS, there is not nothing outstanding. But usually your visits are up to 1 month, because you got your relatives whose wedding is coming, or there is a family function, so that they know that they don't feel, because they what they will see is your previous stamps. They will say, okay, this is the day they entered London, this is the day they departed, so they will calculate the number of days. Then they will see, okay, one was the next visit, again there is a similar pattern, then there is a next visit, again there is a similar pattern, and then they will say, I'm not satisfied that you're a genuine visitor because you've stayed in the UK for extended periods, frequent successive visits, and you made UK your main home. And therefore, I'm refusing you on the grounds of V 4.2 Part B. Right? So they just need one of these grounds to refuse you. So be very careful that you come, you go, you see the place. There is nothing coming, stopping you from coming to the UK, but you should be a genuine visitor. And as I said, I have prepared the cover letters for people who have been refused um, visa for the first time as a general visitor, as a family visitor. And then I've made another cover letter, which is in the link down below, where you are a first time applicant and you're supposed to show your cover letter as a salaried person. And then you are another person who's a self employed person who's coming as a general visitor for the first time. So I made these templates. By again, I reiterate that this is complete legal disclaimer from my side. This is not legal advice. It is there to help you educate yourself about the visa process and to make a stronger application. Now you need to read through and provide the documentation that meets the grounds that A, you're economically stable, you have ties to the country which will compel you to go back, and you will leave the UK at the end of the visit, and you will not make UK your home for by through extended visits or by staying for longer period, right? And you have sufficient funds to cover yourself. And whatever the grounds are required, I have made it in the template, like how to show economic stability, how to show ties to the country, how to show relationship status with the somebody who's settled in the UK, their proof of income, proof of address, all of that in the letter. And I think it is going to immensely help you. And it is only costing $47 per letter template, depending on which you want. So click in the link down below, and I'm sure it is going to help you. But if you want me to prepare your application, I will be happy to do so, but it will be at a far higher cost, where I would look at your documentation, your history, and once I have assessed, then only I can provide you an official quote with that. But to assess your application, I'm going to charge you 500 francs, or whichever is equivalent into pound sterling. And once I've done that, then I'm going to quote you the final fees. But generally, these visitor visa application should not be difficult, as long as you're coming for a genuine reason. So I want to reiterate that I am a small time content creator. As you see that I take you know I make a lot of effort in creating these videos, so that I can generally make helpful videos and impact people positively. And it is my goal to transform 1 million careers. And through this process, step by step guide, I hope you've understood the psyche and the reasoning behind why a UK visitor visa officer case officer is refusing a visa, how you can remedy that, what are the ways to go about it, whether it's a fresh application or whether it's a reconsideration request, and how to make a stronger application, how to add cover letters that can actually answer each and every question mark in the mind of a visa case officer, so that you can get a successful visa approved, whether as a general visitor or as a family visitor, which is after a refusal or prior to your first application. So it will mean the world to me that if you subscribe to my channel, like and comment also. And if you want to reach out to me for paid consultation, you can click in the link down below, where you will find my email address, and I'll be happy to advise you accordingly. Till next time, take care. Bye. I'm going to be discussing